A man accused of shooting and killing his wife, waking up behind bars today. Carl Watts Jr. is set to face a judge later today. He is charged with murder. Police say the 45-year-old stabbed his wife several times on Saturday, the next day while she was at swimming class for her daughter inside the Jewish Community Center. Watts approached her again. Investigators say he offered her money to drop the charges for the stabbing, and when she refused, he reportedly pulled out a gun and shot her until he ran out of bullets.
It was a sunny Sunday afternoon, and the pool at the North Miami Beach Jewish Community Center was filled with laughter and excitement. Families enjoyed the warmth, the sound of kids playing, and the occasional splash. But within moments, everything changed. Gunshots shattered the peace. A man, his face filled with cold determination, chased down his wife, Shandell Harris, and fired at her in front of a pool filled with terrified onlookers, including children. She ran for her life. But he wasn't done. He kept shooting even as she desperately tried to escape. The horror didn't end there. In the chaos, the chilling truth about this man started to unfold. Carl Monty Watts Jr. had done this before. He had been the last person seen with two other women. One whose life was cut short in a motel room and another missing with her fate still a mystery. All of them, mothers with dreams, had crossed paths with this man, and none of them were able to escape his grip. Why did the system fail them? Shandell's tragic death was not an isolated incident. It was the latest chapter in a pattern that had been ignored for far too long. Why had Carl Watts, a man with a history of violence and abuse, been allowed to roam free? And why did it take another death for authorities to finally take action? Was this man truly a monster, or just a product of a broken system? This is Crime of Intent. Please like, subscribe, and share if you find this story meaningful. Every intent reveals a darker story.
I sense it. I had her.
Let's rewind. The story of Shandell Harris is heartbreaking, but it is not the first. To understand the full picture, we need to go back in time to a 25-year-old woman named Vicki Simmons, whose life ended too soon because of Carl Watts. Vicki, a mother of two, had big dreams of building a better future for her family. She was smart, quiet, and worked hard. She had plans that Carl Watts, a man who had already begun showing troubling behavior, would destroy. Vicki's family didn't trust Carl from the start. Her sister, LaShawn, could feel something was off. And soon enough, the signs became undeniable. Carl's behavior was abusive, controlling, and eventually a breaking point came. Vicki ended things with him, but Carl wouldn't let go. Vicki tried to move on, but Carl's grip tightened. 2 days after Vicki went missing, her body was found in a motel room. The police couldn't immediately pin down a cause of death, but Vicki's family was sure of one thing: they suspected Carl. Yet without enough evidence, the case went cold. Carl moved on. Next came Traquita Scott. Traquita, a 24-year-old mother, had big aspirations of becoming a police officer. She worked 2 jobs, was engaged, and had a bright future ahead. But like the others, she couldn't escape Carl. Even though she had moved on and was in a new relationship, she shared a child with Carl, which meant she couldn't fully cut ties with him. And Carl, he wasn't handling it well. Her boss, Jeffrey Davis, witnessed Carl's physical confrontations with Traquita, even in front of customers. Carl was relentless, abusive, and frightening. He had no boundaries. Traquita feared for her safety. Jeffrey had to get a restraining order against Carl, but it didn't stop him. In June of 2014, Traquita vanished. The last person to see her? Carl Watts. The family's search led them to her car, a gold 2007 Nissan Altima, abandoned far from where she lived. But just like Vicki, Carl's involvement was never proven. He turned himself in days later, but there was no charge. Fast forward to 2017, and we meet Shandell Harris, a 30-year-old mother with a future full of promise. She wasn't about to let her past define her. Shandell's life had already been marked by tragedy. She had to raise her daughter, Shania, as a single mom after Shania's father passed away in a car crash. But Shandell never gave up. She moved to Albany, New York, to finish her GED and pursue a better future. She worked hard, got a job, and set her sights on higher education. Shandell had a dream: to become a Miami-Dade commissioner. She was active in her community, volunteering with the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, and local churches. She had so much to offer, so much ambition. But like the others, she crossed paths with Carl Watts Jr. When they met, Carl was charming.
Who said I love you first? Who's more protective? Who cleans more? Who eats the most? Who spends the most money? Who is most likely to start an argument? Who falls asleep first? Who is more annoying? Who loves the hardest?
But over time, Shandell started noticing the same patterns of control and manipulation that had defined his relationships with Vicki and Traquita. After they got married, Shandell found out Carl had been unfaithful and the abuse, both emotional and physical, began. Shandell had finally had enough. She decided to leave him. April 1st, 2022. A day that changed everything for Shandell. Carl, in a fit of rage, attacked her after she discovered he was cheating. She told him she wanted a divorce. Carl didn't take it well. Carl assaulted Shandell. He stabbed her multiple times, but even after that, he attempted to control the situation, trying to hide the evidence and manipulate Shandell into going along with his plan. But she wasn't backing down anymore. She filed charges and began the divorce proceedings. Shandell was ready to escape, but Carl wasn't going to let her go that easily. Just days later, on April 3rd, 2022, Carl knew exactly where Shandell and her mother would be, at the swimming lessons. He was watching, tracking her every move. He showed up at the JCC pool, and what followed next would haunt everyone who witnessed it.
Investigators say he offered her money to drop the charges for the stabbing, and when she refused, he reportedly pulled out a gun and shot her until he ran out of bullets. Officers managed to track him down and arrest him shortly after.
Carl Watts Jr. now sits in jail, awaiting trial for the murder of Shandell Harris. The evidence against him is undeniable. He faces a lifetime behind bars if convicted, but even then, for many, this justice comes far too late. The damage has already been done. The families of Vicki Simmons, Traquita Scott, and Shandell Harris continue to mourn the women they lost, and the children who will grow up without their mothers. For Shandell's young daughter, the trauma is unthinkable. She was just 12 years old when she witnessed her mother's murder. The pain of that moment will stay with her for the rest of her life. Shandell was more than just a victim. She was a woman with goals, with a future, and with so much love to give. She fought to leave a man who controlled her life. She fought to protect her daughter. And she fought to make a better life for herself and her family.
What they give you is what they plan on continuing to give you. You're not going to benefit from that investment, because a bad relationship is an investment. You standing there giving your all and receiving nothing. No, I'm sorry. You receiving exactly what he want to give or she want to give, because it goes both ways with both sex. My thing is, let him go.
Yet despite her strength, the system failed her, just as it had failed Vicki and Traquita. All three women tried to escape Carl Watts, but every time they did, he retaliated with violence. And because of the broken system that failed to intervene sooner, Shandell Harris is dead. The tragedy of Shandell's murder is a wake-up call, a reminder that when it comes to domestic violence, ignoring the signs can have devastating consequences. The system failed Shandell just as it failed Vicki and Traquita. And the heartbreaking reality is that if Carl Watts had been held accountable years ago, maybe Shandell would still be alive today. But there's a sliver of hope. Thanks to the renewed attention on these cases, Vicki's and Traquita's families are once again pushing for justice. Miami-Dade and Fort Lauderdale police are revisiting their cold cases, hoping to find new leads that will finally bring closure to these tragic stories. And with Carl behind bars, there is at least some accountability. Still, the question remains, how did a man like Carl Watts Jr. slip through the cracks for so long? How could a man with such a violent history be allowed to roam free, preying on women time and time again? This question haunts the families and serves as a painful reminder that justice doesn't always come swiftly. In a twist of fate, Carl's arrest sparked a renewed search for the truth. Both the Miami-Dade Police Department and the Fort Lauderdale Police Department announced they were reopening the cases of Vicki and Traquita. Carl had been the last person to see each of them alive. For years, the police had failed to take meaningful action against him, But now, with Shandell's tragic death, the urgency was undeniable. They began to take a deeper look into his past. For Vicki's sister, LaShawn, it was validation. I think like 13 years, but it's like now I feel like this is the time. The pain of losing her sister never faded, but now LaShawn was finally seeing a glimmer of justice.
He has went cold for so many years, I think like 13 years, but it's like now I feel like this is the time.
Traquita's family was also left with a sense of grief and disbelief. Her father, Charles Scott, expressed his pain after hearing about Shandell's murder. He said, "My prayers go out to the family for what they're going through.
Every day, what's going on, hoping to see her again, getting leads here and there, but, not really panning out to nothing."
I understand. The parallels were undeniable. Carl Watts Jr. had killed another woman, another mother, and had once again escaped accountability for his past actions. But this time things were different. In a twist of fate, Carl's arrest sparked a renewed search for the truth. Both the Miami-Dade Police Department and the Fort Lauderdale Police Department announced they were reopening the cases of Vicki and Traquita. Carl had been the last person to see each of them alive. For years, the police had failed to take meaningful action against him, but now, with Shandell's tragic death, the urgency was undeniable. They began to take a deeper look into his past. For Vicki's sister, LaShawn, it was validation. I think like 13 years, but it's like now I feel like this is the time. The pain of losing her sister never faded, but now LaShawn was finally seeing a glimmer of justice. Rest in peace, Vicki Simmons, Traquita Scott, and Shandell Harris. You were loved and you will never be forgotten. This has been Crime of Intent. Please share this video so that others can learn from these stories. Subscribe to our channel for more investigations, more stories that demand justice, and more voices that need to be heard.